When the South Node crosses over the soul, or over Pluto, it means something unconscious about the soul is trying to come up to the surface, and it's usually an old issue that needs to be readdressed. Okay? All right. Oh, we're rolling. Okay. So, good morning, class. Before we go forward, does anybody have any questions from any of the material we've covered so far? Anything that's not clear? Anything you got questions about, wondering about?
Okay,
Sue?
I remembered something else about my dad's bipolar situation. When he was in his last couple of years of life, they used to come out from the VA and take blood samples whenever we thought he was manic. So I don't know if that sets something off to somebody, and then they would adjust his medication from that, which I always thought if they'd have done that from the very beginning, but I think it's just because he had no control over what he was going to do. Everybody that was there was doing it, and when he was manic, he was extremely rude, even if you were helping him. So, but it was the bloodstream, the blood.
So there was something in the blood that they would test for.
Right,
some
right, and it would
chemical.
be really accurate. I mean, I got really accurate at telling when he was manic just by the way he was acting, but so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to know what chemicals they're looking for in the blood. I don't have any expertise.
I don't really get into the whole. Usually, when somebody's sick, I look at how they're if they have some reason to get well, and that was my father. He'd get really sick. We'd think he was going to die, and then all of a sudden, boom, he was well. Oh, come on over, and we're going to just, we'll just make him comfortable, and then, or we're letting your dad go this morning because he's well. So it was an interesting study.
Well, I relate any of, the mental disorders to PTSD. What do they, Jeffrey used to say, excuse me, what was it, approximately 80-85% of souls born today come in with past life PTSD. I mean, and if you look at how distorted we are from natural law, that only makes sense. So anytime there's major emotional, mental issues and labels we apply to them, I always put them down to some type of past life trauma that's just still trying to resolve itself, or still stuck in its circular thinking, circular emotions, etc., etc. So thank you for sharing, honey. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments on anything? Okay. One of the notes that I wanted to go through is, that the hormones in women, because I didn't really explain this, and Jeffrey goes through this in the Uranus book, which has always been a free article on ea.net, but I don't know if any of you, if you don't have the book and you've downloaded it in the past, his whole chapter on anatomy and physiology it's only the first few pages of the chapter, and then it disappeared. It didn't even go through Uranus through the houses, which the original book had. And so I noticed that in the chapter, and so when we get it up on the new revised website, we'll have Uranus through all the houses back in that chapter on the website. I did put it in these 12 archetypes. I did take Uranus through the houses from that book and put it in there for you, so you've got it in your manual. But when Jeffrey goes through that Uranus chapter, first of all, the adrenal glands will regulate the hormones, and Mars and Venus relating to the adrenal glands. When the adrenals get stressed out, we can have, all the fluctuating hormones. And so I wanted to just share what was in that Uranus book in regards to estrogen, progesterone, adrenaline, and cortisone, what Jeffrey had said in there. The adrenals also regulate metabolism and how well we digest. And so when you have, again, adrenaline is Mars, and therefore Aries first house. Cortisone is Venus, and it is the Libra seventh house side. When you have too much adrenaline, of course, you're wired. You are like a type A personality. You're not grounded. You can just be, just like you're too wired. And you can either overly focus on things or not focus at all. You put the Virgo into that too much adrenaline and you get into the overwhelm and you can't focus on anything. But you just, too much adrenaline, you're very wired, okay? And you're not grounded. And it can cause everything to just overproduce, overdo. And then the flip side of that is the exhaustion that comes. So when there's too much cortisone, which is the Venus side, then you've got a loss of energy. You just want to withdraw from life. You just want to go in. You just, you can't do anything. You just want to check out. And when you have too much of both of these, too much cortisone, too much adrenaline, you yo-yo, you flip-flop back and forth between being overly active and no energy at all, overly wired, and you can't get any gumption to get up and go in life. And then eventually you burn out the adrenals. And when you do that, then all of the hormones get impaired with how well they function. Also, when you have too much of the adrenaline and too much of the cortisone, you just, the sexual drive goes haywire. It gets overactive. But again, then that can burn itself out as well. Adrenal exhaustion in our Western world is quite common because we don't honor siesta. We don't honor relaxation. We don't honor that time to slow down and recharge our batteries.
Remedy.
Excuse me. Remedies for the adrenals. I've not ran across anything, but off the top of my head, you would want to do B complex, especially I would say the B5 because I'm just going off the top of my head because Mars, Aries first house, that lactic acid, when you produce too much lactic acid, the muscles are inflamed, the circulation shuts down, nothing regulates very well. So you would want to do the B vitamins to calm things down. I would also say faux tea root. And the things that I can remember from the Uranus book is Jeffrey would say things like your complex carbs that would have a slow burn to them. And also the things like massage, all those therapies that help you relax, meditation, I would say, Epsom salts baths to get toxins out of you, everything that would basically help us calm down stress. And for me, personally, I just am a strong advocate of essential fatty acids. I would think they would almost go in there as well because they're so much a part of depression they're so much a part of lubrication. You know, the healthy fats in all of the cells help keep everything lubricated and flowing. Okay?
Thanks.
And then the other part of this is when the adrenals get stressed out, then they clamp down on the hormones, and the hormones don't produce adequately. Okay? So going through it from a woman's perspective, and this also is in the Uranus book, when women don't have enough progesterone, and that's the hormone that's produced in the second half of the cycle after ovulation. When women don't have enough progesterone, they can have PMS symptoms. They can have bleeding, excessive bleeding. They can have clots, passing of clots. They can be more prone to vaginal infections. They can have all of the fibroids and tumors that come in the womb, cysts on the ovaries. And they can be prone to miscarriage. Because at ovulation, when the egg is dropped, if it is fertilized, okay, progesterone is the lining of the uterus. And it's if you've got to have progesterone on that uterus in order for the fertilized egg to attach to the wall of the uterus and then develop. And so women who don't produce enough progesterone are prone to miscarriage. And what's happened in our society, because we have so many foods that act, processed foods, cooked foods, chemicals in the foods we eat. People feel that also chemicals in the plastics, in the plastic water bottles or our plastic containers. There are so many phytoestrogens in our environment. It's really throwing this estrogen progesterone out of whack. And it used, for a long time it was all this big push about estrogen and adequate estrogen, and especially after menopause, and soy got very popular. And really what was going on is women not getting enough progesterone. And again, good sources of progesterone are the herbs, wild yam root. That's why you saw all those wild yam creams become so popular. And Vitex. Vitex is wild chaste tree berries.
Wild.
Chaste, C-H-A-S-T-E, chaste berries. What's that word? Chastity?
Yeah.
That the chaste berries has this old story to it from over in Europe. They used to give it to women so that they would be chaste, so that they would be the virgins, so that they would calm down the hormones. And it did the opposite. So it was called that observation correlation with that herb. And another one that I think can be very helpful, especially for women that have that loss of the sex drive, Damiana. The Damiana. And I don't know that Damiana so much has wild yam in it. I'm not sure on that one, but it just helps all of the hormones flow again for both men and women. And as a matter of fact, postmenopausal for women, Damiana is an excellent herb for vaginal dryness.
How do you take Damiana?
You can take it as a capsule or a tincture. You want to play around with it. Doesn't take much. In Mexico, you can get it as a liqueur. Damiana liqueur is quite common down there. So if you have too much progesterone, and again, in the women, Mars is the regulator of progesterone. So you look at the female's Mars in the chart. If there's too much progesterone, there can be a, excuse me, a hyperfertile state, a real strong sexual drive, and from Jeffrey's notes, the body's desire to heal. Okay? When we move to estrogen with women, and this is ruled by Venus in the female chart, and estrogen also rules, Venus also rules estrogen in the male chart, although they don't produce anywhere near quantities the female does. If you have too much estrogen, you can have missing periods or that spotty bleeding in between. You can become very tired during your ovulation, in the midst of the cycle. And you can have difficulty conceiving. Women need that progesterone to rise at mid-cycle to drop the egg down from the ovaries. And so if you have too much estrogen, sometimes that can inhibit that, interfere with that. When you don't have enough estrogen, it's similar to not having enough progesterone. The PMS, the clots, the infections, the fibers, but you don't notice the symptoms as much. There are less side effects when you don't have enough estrogen.
What roots would you recommend, herbs would you recommend for this?
For estrogen, the most famous one are two, black cohosh and licorice root. And so again, as we had said a couple of days ago, you know, in our traditional world, it's HRT, hormone replacement therapy, is so popular yet controversial. And they used to only give women estrogen. Then they realized they've got to give them both. They've got to give them estrogen and progesterone after menopause. Again, once women go through menopause and there is no need to be childbearing anymore, it doesn't take massive quantities of estrogen or progesterone. And so it can take a little longer, but you can easily do it with herbal therapy. Any of those herbs that I just mentioned, again, I love the Solar Ray 7D, which has these herbs for both estrogen and progesterone.
Where do you get it?
Any health food store, Solar Ray is the brand. And there's probably other brands that have, you know, hormonal change.
You mean a multivitamin?
No, it's an herbal blend.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's herbal capsules. But they have the black cohosh, the licorice root, and the wild yam. Many of them have the Vitex in it. And so you're getting those minute amounts of both estrogen and progesterone that the body will work with then however it needs to. Yes?
So Kim Marie, my body won't receive black cohosh. Like it just won't.
Can
Like
you do licorice root?
So if I could get something without the black cohosh and
Yes.
just with the, because like it actually is
And
a
you can,
toxin.
and you can, yeah, and you can do as we talked before. You can go buy the herbs and make your own tinctures, or you can buy the herbs as a single herb capsule.
Oh.
They're almost always all available as single herb capsules, and so find out which ones work with your body. And again, when you start working with some of these herbs post-menopausal, you have to play around with the quantity. Some women only need small, minute amounts. Other women need more. But you can balance it out. And you can, this is what we've done for hundreds of thousands of years. But then again, why do women have all of these hot flashes and hormonal issues at menopause? It comes down to westernized diets. It comes down to the fact that we have all of these things put into our bodies that we never used to, and it throws the hormones out of whack. Kim, did you have a question? Did I answer it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Kimberly, what
Yes.
does testosterone have to do with all of this? I have a very high level of testosterone.
When women have a high level of testosterone, which can be a very active Mars, okay, it is just your masculine side is overactivated. And maybe you need to be a little overactivated for a while if, because testosterone is that Aries life force, and so it's kind of, it's not, again, it's not an absolute or one size fits all, you know. When women also have low sex drives, sometimes they'll put the herb saw pimento, which is a common herb for men. Sometimes they will put that in herbal formulas. And for women, a little bit of testosterone can help with the sexual drive. It can help with having a little more life force. Okay? If you get too much, I mean, you never, you have to be careful about too much of any. If you get too much testosterone and you're a female, again, you can start stressing yourself out, which my guess is might impact upon those adrenals. And so you go through spurts of energy and then you're exhausted. Spurts of energy and then you're exhausted. So I'm not familiar with how much quantities women should have, but women have testosterone and men have estrogen.
Right. And I think that's probably why I didn't have the hot flashes and things.
It
So-
could be. It could also have been that it had enough. If you've got high levels of testosterone, you might have good levels of progesterone as well. It's. I'm not an expert on it. It's just been a learning curve for myself on a personal level. And I've just known that if I've supplied both estrogen and progesterone in an herbal form, it took my hormones a few years, but they did calm down. Doesn't mean I don't get a hot flash, but it did calm down. And I think life goes on. Okay, so I just wanted to touch in on that one. Any questions on that? And any questions on that with that? Okay. I'm just trying to, some of these, we've stressed out. Oh, stressed out Pluto. Pluto, 8th house, and Scorpio. When we have those archetypes stressed out, again, there is a propensity to create genetic damage. I mean, we can be born with the genetic damage and it can be latent, or we can have something start mutating. And I know we talked about that, but I just wanted to say it again, that Pluto, Scorpio, 8th house, when that stuff gets stressed out, you can create genetic damage. Okay? And you
Can
can
you give me an example of that?
the red blood cells mutate, RNA mutates, DNA mutates. While Venus rules the veins and the arteries, Mars is also involved with the capillaries. And so I sometimes will look at the veins, arteries, and capillaries. Well, they're mostly Venus. They're a secondary with Mars. Okay? And also, while the adrenals have a lot to do with the production of the hormones, the ovaries have a secondary function. So the ovaries also have to do with regulating the hormones. I think we mentioned this one, but I just want to double check. The Virgo side of Mercury, so Mercury, Virgo 6th house, appendicitis attacks.
What do the appendix do again?
Oh, I've read this, but I don't have it in the top of my head. I'll have to check that one out. The appendix has to do with regulating hormones, and when you have an appendix attack, I'm wanting to say bile, but that's the gallbladder. There's a hormone with the appendix. Let me look that one
I
up,
think you can learn.
and I'll try and do that one on the break and find out for you. But that will be something with the Mercury Virgo 6th. And of course, this is the part that I wanted to say that we probably mentioned, but just in case, exhaustion and overwork is the Virgo 6th house side of Mercury. I mean, that's pretty common sense, okay? Also, another little detail with Moon Cancer 4th, anytime there's swelling in the body, you'll have Moon Cancer 4th involved. Tonsils are part of the lymphatic system and ruled by the moon, co-ruled by Neptune as part of the immune system as well. So your tonsils are your lymphatics, and the lymphatics is part of the immune system. So moon and Neptune. Okay? And then I think I've done pretty good. Thyroid, which is ruled by Mercury, can be co-ruled by Jupiter or Uranus. Thyroid disorders can lead to autoimmune disorders. So there's a Mercury, thyroid, Neptune, autoimmune. And they see that Virgo, Pisces polarity that can go on there. And so another thing that comes from the Uranus book is, this is working a little bit with the endocrine system. The hypothalamus, we've talked about that gland, co-ruled by Uranus and the moon. The hypothalamus is the, regulates all of the electrical messages, remember? Also has some overall regulating of the hormones because of all the messages. So the nervous system and the endocrine system have a very close link to each other. Nervous system ruled by Uranus, endocrine system overall ruled by Neptune, okay? And so the nervous system will send messages to the hypothalamus, which will then send messages to the pituitary. And the pituitary regulates all the secretions of hormones from all the other glands. So hypothalamus is Uranus, secondary moon, pituitary Jupiter, Saturn, okay? And then the pituitary will affect the pineal gland, which is ruled by Neptune. And Jeffrey would always talk about this trinity of consciousness that would go on between the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the pineal. Okay? And so those three glands are very important in basically regulating everything within the body. You know, the hypothalamus controls all the temperatures in the body, which should be blood pressure, metabolism, adrenals. Okay? So the adrenals are also overruled by Uranus through the hypothalamus. All right? And so the pituitary regulates things like hunger, thirst, wakefulness, the desire to go to sleep. Growth. Growth and decay. Yep. So there's a whole lot to the whole endocrine system that we can move forward with too. Okay, so that was all. I just wanted to make sure that, oh, one more. The pineal gland and melatonin with Neptune and Pisces 12.
Did we go over teeth and chewing?
T- teeth are ruled by Saturn,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
And chewing would be.
And chewing, to me, would be Moon and Saturn, okay? And, chewing starts the salivary glands, which are your first of your digestive glands. So there's the Moon with digestion that starts to come along. With this melatonin, with the pineal gland, remember when it's dark, we produce melatonin and it regulates sleep. Well, the other thing is when you overproduce melatonin, it creates a lot of psychosis in the brain, neurosis, schizophrenia, multiple personalities. Jesse was asking me about that. Personality disorders. Those can come from the pineal gland and excess melatonin, which is going to be Neptune.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Neptune, Pisces 12. So now you can see where that Pisces 12th house can get to the craziness and the insaneness. It will relate to the hormone melatonin. Okay, that was all that I had come through with my notes that I wanted to make sure that we had covered through these 12 archetypes. Anybody have any questions or anything? And go ahead, Maureen.
Yeah, I was wondering if they tried to affect the pituitary with any kind of diet pill.
That's a good one, the pituitary. I'm not aware of any. I have not heard of any. I would say when it comes to the endocrine system, that you would want to have just overall good digestion, good nutrition. I've not heard specifically of any herbs or anything working with the pituitary. Again, I want to say the EFAs. I want to go with those. I'm going to glance here and just see if I can see if I see anything, okay? And look for I'm looking for my endocrine system. Some common, just as I was working with this, Foti is a Uranus herb, right? An herb that's not mentioned, that I have not mentioned, that I have done, it's one that's become harder to find, and that is, help me out, the Pluto herb. Sanicle. Sanicle. Strong, that's a strong Pluto herb. It's harder to find these days, but if you can ever find Sanicle, that's a great herb for any Pluto transits. Also, Podiarco for the immune system, so sometimes I'll relate all those immune herbs to Neptune. Okay.
What was that again?
Podiarco, we talked about that earlier. P-A-U. Next word, D apostrophe. Next word, A-R-C-O. Podiarco bark. South American herb, very good for the immune system. I'll put that one down to Neptune. Now, that's a real good question, Maureen. And I would have a tendency to say to help the pituitary gland because it's co-ruled by Jupiter and Saturn. You may find it helpful to work with the blood purifying herbs, immune herbs. I'll make a note to work on that one too because endocrine herbs. I'll make a note on that.
Marie, did we also talk about sensitivity to touch in the body? Like, I know I've had clients, there was a client I had who, I mean, she had a full stellium in Scorpio in the second house, and she hated anybody touching her.
Yes.
Which seemed really a strange, almost oxymoron to me.
No, it's true.
What is that? I mean, she had Pluto and Virgo on the 12th, I have in a Virgo rising, but what do you say, Christina?
I shouldn't have said anything. Yeah, I think it's that sort of that attraction repulsion thing. You know, probably we'll be able to explore it a bit when, you know, we do chart work, right, Kim Marie?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that that's, for me anyway, that, I mean, this is totally anecdotal. I attribute it a little bit also to my Neptune in the first. I just don't like being touched.
Oh, it's you, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's me. I've got a stellium in Scorpio in the second,
Yeah.
and Neptune in the first, and yeah, I just don't like being touched.
It's-
You know, it took me 50 years to find a hairdresser that I could go to. But I mean, really, because I hate people. No, I just can't stand for just anybody touching me. I'm not one of those people that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Physiologically, it's Venus. It's Venus Taurus in the second, the senses. If you have a heavy Venus Taurus second, or the polarity Scorpio Pluto eighth, it's the senses. It's the touch, and it can also come from the Cancer Capricorn axis as well.
I mean, it could be a sign of a purification, it could be,
Yes.
it's complicated.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
right,
complicated. It's not just one thing.
No, yeah. Okay.
And, you know, human consciousness is complicated.
But I think it's also to a lesser degree, because I have the stellium in the 8th house with the Taurus planets, and it isn't like I don't like to be touched at all. It's just, right, it's kind of, even shaking hands, it's like I don't even like to shake hands with people if I don't like them. I mean, people who know me, it's like, you know, they kind of look at me to see if they can hug me and stuff. I mean, it isn't, I don't pull away or anything, but it's kind of like, oh, okay, you know, that's nice, you want to. So to a lesser degree, it sounds like, but the same sort of thing.
Well, I should just qualify here. It's, you know, I've worked through a lot of it, but I mean, it's not like I can't stand being touched now or anything, but I know that that was something that used to come up, so it resonated when she said that. I think it is, as you say, it's something to do with a hypersensitivity to what's transmitted through the touch. And so with Scorpio being in the second, you know, when somebody touched me before, you know, I was able to be in control of my consciousness, everything would come through. And it would be like overload. It was too much, right? So that's how it worked for me. But I like hugging now, you know, and I've had 4 kids.
So I'm thinking maybe you're super sensitive because you're psychic too.
Oh.
That was my next thing. I mean, because it isn't a single thing, there's also the whole archetype of Neptune, Pisces in the 12th, and the whole etheric body. You know, and people who are very sensitive in those areas can, you know, somebody, they don't even have to touch them, they just start to get close. And again, if there's not healthy boundaries, you know, there can be, you know, you're just impacted, you feel it. So there's that thing. Then there's Uranus ruling the nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, and if everything is sluggish, or toxic. That's where you get the chronic fatigue syndrome, and people just, they have a bare little touch and it hurts. That's just, toxicity in the immune system, toxicity in the nervous system. So yes, there's many situations with that. When you have it in the Cancer Capricorn axes, and you've heard about this in the regular Pluto books, you can have the opposite. You can have craving for touch.
Sure. Cancer.
Yeah, Cancer just wants to soak it up, and Capricorn wants it too, but you've got to get past the wall.
It's got to be done right.
Yes. Yes.
That's important. That's to be touched wrong. Don't be wrong.
Kim,
Yes.
talking about that reminds me of one of the reasons I think it was so stressful living in New York was because you ride to work in a subway, standing and crammed up against all these people. It's horrible.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's just people totally out of touch with their whole bodies to
Have to survive on
work through that kind of stuff. Right. Okay, any other questions or anything? Do we need a short little break before we move on? Anybody need a break? Okay. All right. So again, now what I want to do is just have us kind of play with what we've been learning so far. And because the 6-12 axes can be one of the ways in which we start to look through a chart to start to see some of the physical symptoms, manifestations of imbalances through the 6th house cusp, and then through the 12th house cusp, starting to look at what would be some of the disconnect with source energy that's filtering down through to be the physical manifestations. So I thought we'd just go forward and play with some of our charts that we have in an interactive basis. And so, anybody want to volunteer to be first, or should we just work our way through? All right. You see Maureen's chart's in here somewhere. So if you want to go look for Maureen. And where's my Maureen? I got Megan. Oh, there it is. And just to help us out, I am going to do some of this stuff. We'll see how far I can get in regards to I think I have enough paper to go through. Oh yeah, I got plenty of paper. We'll be fine. And so,
Honey, can I have you use the wider marker?
this is the only marker I have. We forgot markers. We didn't remember markers any. So, all right. So we're going to start working with this. If you guys want to look at the chart. Okay, you've got your
And if you can remember to maybe draw the glyphs and the planets a little larger, it would, again, these charts are going to be in the materials, but I'm just asking
Okay.
you to
okay.
larger.
Okay, all right, we'll do, sweetie. All right, so when we look at the 6th and the 12th axes, and we are looking at it from the perspective of health and wellness, you many times can just, because again, the Virgo 6th house side of Mercury is traditionally known as how we can see all of these physical imbalances, the physical imperfections that will start to show up in the physical body. As we just look at this chart then, let's just work with just these few things, and if we feel we have to add more in, we can. And I can already see where I can start. I'm going to add in just these two with her as well, because this one's 12, this one's 17, and we have a retrograde going on here. All right, so you can see we've got a lot going on just in this 6th and this 12th house. If you have Aquarius on the cusp of the 6th house, this is the Uranus archetype that's going to be coming through. Could we see where we could possibly have physical issues with the nervous system? Could we see somebody who could perhaps run around with stress, be a little stressed out? Not even looking at any of the planets that we've got in this chart, in the 6th and the 12th, and there's quite a few of those. But when you have this Aquarius on the 6th house cusp, health-wise, could you see somebody who would run around with perhaps a susceptibility to stress? Uranus, the nervous system. And then if you go up there and look where the ruler Uranus is, it's up there in Cancer. It's up there in the 10th house. It's retrograde. What triggers the stress? Security. Yep. Emotional fears. Anybody else?
Well, it's that 10th, it's that 10th house thing too, right?
Mhm.
So she takes on a lot of it onto herself, and if you look at the traditional ruler being Saturn of Aquarius, it's in the first, and so that contributes to that feeling that she probably has, that she has to do it, she has to do the whole thing, and so she keeps doing it and doing it and doing it until she collapses,
Exhausts herself and collapses.
and has adrenal exhaustion, right?
Aquarius on the 6th, what else would you look at in regards to all of the various types of stress that can come through with Aquarius and the archetype of the nervous system? We were just talking about this. Could this be someone who, and then we can also, this will be reiterated by Uranus in that Cancer 10th. Could we have somebody who could get very, that whole sensitivity to touch thing that we saw going on before, that we were talking about before? Aquarius on that 6th house, they're very, very sensitive peripheral nervous system, especially if anything starts to go haywire. It's almost like everything can go haywire. It's almost like that nervous system can sometimes just get whacked out. Would this be somebody who, just looking at Aquarius on the 6th house cusp, would want to pay attention to all the nutrition involved with calming down the nerves, with regenerating the nerves?
In the nervous system.
Yep.
Yeah.
This would be someone who, right off the bat, I would say, you would want to have lots of, I would invite you to look at lots of faux T root and lots of B complex and lots of nutrition foods that would nourish the nervous system.
Yeah, and then with Uranus there in Cancer in the 10th, I would think learning to have really safe touch, you know, growing into that would be really important, and feeling an empowerment with that. You know, it's how she gets her own authority, by learning, you know, safe touch.
Look at the ruler of Aquarius, Uranus, being up there in Cancer, in 10th. Could this be someone who does not digest food very well when they're stressed?
Yeah. Yeah. Uranus anxiety, Cancer digestion.
Chris?
And just also, for Maureen's sake, more than anything else, you know, she has to be mindful of the fact that she's got that Jupiter-Sun thing going on, because then the Jupiter would sort of augment everything. And so she really has to catch it 10 steps ahead of before it gets to crisis point.
Could you explain that for me, Christina? What do you mean by augment it?
Well,
Expand. Oh, the Jupiter expanding it.
yeah.
Oh, heightening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so there's the capacity for healing as much as the capacity for trouble.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Everything is intensified, but Kim Marie, Jupiter co-rules the adrenals with
Jupiter co-rules the pituitary
pituitary. Yeah, I mean, it's important here because it's all connected, and it's so close to the sun, and it's in the 6th.
But if you, I think your point was, and I agree, if Jupiter can be excess, you know, and we've got all these planets right there in Aquarius, and it starts to get going, she can just, yeah, if she gets stressed out, she can just get overstressed and just go exemplify it, yeah.
It's also new phase in that 6th house, new phase sun, right?
Well,
there's-
Jupiter's new phase to the sun.
Correct, yeah. So
Yes.
there's an instinctive that's almost like harder for her to control that when it does get too big.
And also, with Jupiter's capacity for compensation, it could be, it's almost like a live wire is overcompensating for something else that's going on underneath it.
Right. Say again, Kim?
I said, well, wouldn't the vital force, the life force, the sun, is
Yes.
stressed to begin with because
Yes.
it's in Uranus and its opposite sign, and then it's conjunct the Jupiter in new phase. So again, the propensity for letting the stress,
Just get all out of control.
and it would just zap her vital force.
Yes.
And then conjunct Venus, she could have a propensity for breathing issues, maybe, even with it up there in the Uranus. Could she have, like, are you susceptible to, like, bronchitis or any of those kind of things, maybe?
Well, years ago when I used to smoke in the early 80s, I went around with bronchitis for a year because if I went to the doctor, they would just tell me not to smoke, and I wasn't ready to not smoke.
Aquarius, lining of the lungs, bronchitis.
And then the Venus there.
Yep. Anybody else?
Well, just to sort of, you know, take it to facilitation and what she could do with it. She does have Mars in Libra conjunct the South Node, and it's in relationship to that Sun Jupiter, and it is from the 2nd, right? So, you know, we would want to encourage her to access what she knows already about this stuff, because she has a great deal of inherent intuitive knowledge about how to manage her body, especially, and she's not going to do it like other people. It's going to be different, especially with Uranus up there in the 10th, right? And it's going to come out of the body, Cancer, of her own experience. So we want to empower her to trust what her higher self tells her about what to do, in these cases. So just the fact that she's here at the course is really a good thing, because she knows that she needs to learn this stuff so that she can, figure out how to manage her own body system, right?
And then we also have Uranus square those nodes. So that is the skip step too. So do we want to talk about, and then also with the resolution node being the north node in the 8th house in Aries.
Yeah, I'm listening and then I forget what I'm going to say. Aquarius on that 6th house cusp, there can be somebody who's noticing all of these physical imbalances, and she's wanting to mentally learn what it is that she needs to do. But with that ruler Uranus up there in Cancer in the 10th, again, like Chris was saying, she's actually got to learn it from the emotional body. Yeah. There's almost, sometimes if you put Aquarius on that 6th house cusp, you can want to have a disassociation from the body. I'm not comfortable in my body. I don't want to be in my body. You look at that Venus, Sun, Jupiter. This could be somebody who vacillates back and forth between I don't want to be in my body and then getting in the body and going to extremes of excess in the body. Again, that whole ability to be balanced with her physical body. Luz?
In terms of the Sun, Venus, Jupiter stellium there, it's also all opposed to Moon Pluto conjunction, and I think that with the Jupiter factor too, like all of this could be really expanded. And like she mentioned, even that when she was told not to smoke, just didn't want to listen until she was ready. So obviously Aquarius kind of thing there, but also the kind of Plutonian thing of just I'm gonna go through my version of the underworld until I'm ready to let go of it. And so I think that could be problematic, a kind of need for the kind of one's own experience of something that may not be so healthy just because it feels intense. And so yeah, I think that's something that's really key there.
Yeah, this is a real strong opposition, in this chart. Let's move this in then with and play with this on a metaphysical level with having the 12th house cusp. Then Leo on the 12th house cusp. If we have Aquarius on that 6th house, and we're looking at that physical body, and we're looking at either extreme sensitivity in that physical body or extreme disassociation with that physical body, okay? With Aquarius, the extreme sensitivity or the extreme disassociation following that, with that. And you can also see, if we put Aquarius on the 6th house cusp, could there be a lot of trauma locked up in that physical body?
Yes.
And so now if we start going over to just that 12th house cusp, and you're looking at Leo on that 12th house cusp, could we start to see some, a whole deep issue in regards to self-love, Leo, and worthiness of self-love? The whole, that 12th house cusp is going to be an indicator of this whole connection to source energy or disconnection to source energy. And if you put Leo there, it can be a real interesting dynamic in that there can be this unconscious Leo, who's going to love me? Who's going to notice that spark of source within me? And yet this person on deep levels is having to do it themselves, notice it themselves. They have to create, Leo, that one-on-one connection to source energy on deep personal levels. And if you put Leo on the 12th house cusp, okay, the classic is I want to do it through my ego instead of my soul. To really get into my deep connection to source energy feels like losing control. So I'm going to find excuses for doing what I need to do for myself on the deepest levels possible. And that's just looking at Leo on the 12th house cusp. You know, if you then look at the fact that she's a 12th house Pluto in Leo, she's got the moon there, balsamic, it's Pluto's retrograde. I mean, that just gets reinforced with what we just said. I want to be deeply connected to source energy, but I'm afraid to. It feels like letting go of control. Follow? Comments? Make sense? Roy?
And yet this deep desire to know her own essential needs in this lifetime, Venus, balsamic sun, 6th house, she wants to get in touch with what her essential needs are on that level, but it's confused by the Aquarius perhaps, and yet in almost with that 612, with those powerful planets in the 612, her mantra needs to be throughout this process, I am not a victim.
Right. Good one. So it's easy to go into that psychology of it. So now let's take this back down into the physiology of this and work with this opposition in the 6-12. Can we see somebody who would have a digestive system, Moon Pluto, that could just easily get out of whack by the slightest stress? And so this could be somebody who could, again, be very sensitive, but could be out of touch with that sensitivity. And stress hits, you know, and then everything just starts to go haywire. Chris?
Can I ask Maureen a question?
Yes, let's hear from Marie.
Maureen, did you used to vomit a lot?
Only when I was sick.
Oh, okay, so were you sick a lot?
As a child, I was.
So vomiting was one of the sort of the things that happened when you were sick. You know, some people, get headaches, some people get fevers. Was vomiting one of your deals?
I remember being sick a lot of times, and I had a very stressful childhood. Mother and father fighting all the time, father drinking, very chaotic. So probably I was sick a lot of the time because of the stress in the house. I would think now, looking back on it.
And then you
I would throw up. I had fevers. I had ear problems, chicken pox, yeah.
Mucus issues, Moon.
So the reason I asked about the vomiting, Kim Marie, and you can sort of clarify this, is because, Mars is conjunct the south node and square that Uranus and Cancer, the stomach, right? And so I just wondered if the vomiting would be a simple symptom of all the emotional stress, and then so the minute that she would get stressed, then she would just want to expel it from the system. I don't know.
Yeah, which could also be, reinforced by this the whole Aquarius Uranus archetype. Throw it off. I mean, as I look at this, I just see a very sensitive stomach. What can she stomach? So that would reinforce that whole purging element that can go on. The purging, the vomiting, throw it off stuff, that tends to be a Taurus Scorpio thing.
I've probably asked Maureen this also, but Kim Marie, I am still wondering about the kind of nervous energy being overcompensation for maybe her deep sensitivity.
Yes.
so it's easier to go into kind of, trauma instead of dealing with her deep sensitivities.
Yeah? Maureen, you've
What do you think?
Can you give me an example, Pam? I don't really know what you mean.
Maybe the example would be if somebody really hurts your feelings, you go into kind of maybe a victimhood instead of saying, well, what's going on here? My feelings were hurt. What is happening with this person? Do I need to have a dialogue with them? My feelings, I'm sensitive to what was happening, instead of you kind of go off into trauma.
Well, I would tend not to want to talk to them, so I would avoid them, I think.
Have you been bothered with a lot of digestive issues? Or historically?
Yes, historically, because there was a period of time where I used to take a lot of antacids and things like that, which I don't anymore. Now I just eat a little bit better. One thing, I don't know if this will have anything to do with it, but I cannot eat any kind of junk food. I get very, very sick if I have a mix anything, McBurger or I can't eat that stuff. I get sick. I get violent diarrhea from it, which is probably a good thing that I can't eat junk food. But it can be inconvenient if you can't always get something and you can't, just have that. I can't eat it.
Junk food, very high fat. Jupiter, the liver, that produces the bile that digests the fat. The Jupiter in Aquarius, so the bile becoming frozen. This Jupiter Sun, opposition to Moon Pluto. This is someone who, again, digestive enzymes, hard time to stomach everything because there's such extreme sensitivities. So very important to learn, what types of food combining would be very important for you so that you can eat foods that are healthy and nourishing for you, digestive enzymes, because again, Aquarius, all that Aquarius energy, when you get stressed out, everything in the body just kind of dehydrates, Aquarius. It can just start to get disassociated. There can just be some checkout, and so nothing really flows or works. I can see where this stress could also be have some proclivity to be sensitive to heart and circulation issues. Okay, we've got the Aquarius Leo axes very emphasized here. We've got the sun, in Aquarius. This could be someone who could have the hardening of the arteries. So this is someone who also, if you look at this, exercise could be so important for this person because it would help the digestive enzymes flow. It would help the liver detoxify so it produces bile so that there can be digestion going on. You following that? You seeing where that's coming from in regards to that? But working on healing on all 4 levels, it's still going to come back to, with that Leo on the 12th house cusp, just really working to visualize yourself as a child of God and worthiness with source energy. And then that's going to go back to that 6th house cusp and go down to that physiological level and help everything relax rather than being in such a state of, I want to say, spasms frozen. Dehydration. How about water? Do you find that you drink enough water?
Well, I do go to extremes. I either drink all my water or I don't drink any water. Um, I, when I'm on my diet, I drink 8 glasses, which is 7 of these bottles. That's why I use the bottles so I know how many I have. So I do fluctuate back and forth, like you said, with the extremes.
When you get enough water, do you think clearer? Are you able to maintain better mental balance?
I think I don't think I noticed that, but what I notice is just in general feeling better. And when I don't have the water, I kind of have a low-grade headache all the time. And so when I go off the diet, I ate all the wrong things. This last time, this is how I deal with emotional upheaval. My mother died 3 months ago, and I think it just hit me a couple of weeks ago. And I went off of my diet, and I regained 10 of the 17 pounds that I lost, and I just ate fattening things and just didn't pay attention to drinking water. So I didn't feel good, but I didn't care. It's just like I rather wanted to, I just had this feeling of I couldn't stop eating. I hate it, but I kind of accept it now that I just have to be in that state until I don't want to be there, and then I'll just stop. I just wait till it's ready, and then I know I'll stop. So I don't worry about it anymore, and I don't beat myself up over it anymore. I just know this is a temporary thing. And it helped me talking to you on the AIM program call when I asked you about that. And you talked about the emotional roller coaster can be part of my detoxing. So that helped me, that feel better. So I just have to be patient, and I get frustrated. It seems like it takes forever. I'll go along for maybe 6 months on an even keel, but then something traumatic will happen, and I just kind of roller coaster and then get all upset, and I eat all stupid things, and it's hard going back and forth.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it kind of seems like the Uranus in Cancer is about that eating the bad stuff. It's like the wrong signals, almost.
Yes.
Like the deep nourishment that you're needing, Cancer of the emotional body, is not, you got to figure out a way to help you help yourself get a deeper nourishment.
Exactly.
Cancer, and so it's interesting that you eat fatty foods. I think of cancer, you know what I mean? And that archetype of like the mother kind of holding us in, even, in the womb, and the metaphor of the fatty food. So figuring out a way to kind of nourish yourself in a warm, kind of loving, sweet way. So you get nourishment.
There's that whole processing of life, be it on a physiological level with the whole digestive system, which again can go through extremes of being out of whack, but then the whole metaphysical processing of life that is so important. When you see that Uranus in Cancer generation, the ruler of that 6th house cusp, Uranus in Cancer generation have very sensitive stomachs. They have very sensitive digestive systems. And so this is actually a generation of people that have got to pay attention to diet. Pay attention to diet and nutrition. and Maureen, that Aquarius on that sixth house cusp, she can just want to go off in the head. And so the better that she can process through the emotional body, the better she'll eat. I mean, that's true for all of us. But that's extremely signified by that Uranus in Cancer generation. And then for her personally, with that Moon, Pluto, balsamic conjunction as well. Anybody else? Questions? Comments? Anything else you want to see? Anything else in the chart you want to bring in with this?
I have a question. So, just possibilities with right now, Saturn is on, just crossed her ascendant, and then it's a Saturn return coming in here, and I'm just wondering, health issues that could be coming up, especially because Saturn is squaring Chiron in the chart, and I just thought you could comment on that.
If we listen to what Maureen was saying, it sounded like she had herself moving through with Saturn over that ascendant, a whole new start with health and nutrition. Am I correct on that, Maureen? That you've been going through?
I try. This is, I think, the third or fourth time I've started this diet since October. But the last time, it lasted for 2 months before I went and couldn't do it anymore. And that going off of it only lasted 6 weeks, and then I started it again about 2 weeks ago now. And I always feel better when I'm on it, but I guess my way of dealing with upset is I just can't sustain healthy living.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I really haven't figured that out. But I do want to figure everything out mentally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say with these, planets in that sixth house cusp, with Saturn in Virgo, it's just, it would be in the first house, it would be so important. She's recognizing the need to pay attention to nutrition, that she's got, Saturn transiting through that first, that she's got to pay attention to the health of her body. She's really starting to get this one. I would say because of what happens with this opposition in the 6th and 12th, and the fact that we can, with oppositions, you're either or so much, that reinforces that whole Aquarius on the 6th house. We can go through such extremes with our health and our nutrition. I would say it would be very important for you to be gentle with yourself and just try again nutritionally and try again nutritionally. In other words, you just keep making the effort until you start to see the changes and the improvements. I mean, that's a classic thing, but it's reinforced by your chart. I mean, how many of us make a lifestyle choice and we're completely successful with it the first time we try? We many times have to try multiple times, and then eventually, as we find that ebb and flow, we notice that we are eating better more than we're not, that we're paying attention to how things affect us more than we're not. Physiologically, I would also say with that Saturn and Virgo, again, you're finally trying to find the different ways to deal with stress. I mean, all that Aquarius, the planets in Libra, there's a lot of air, there's a lot of mentalness that wants to go on here. And so it can lead to this circular thinking, it can lead to stress, and that just makes everything in the body break down. And so you're having to learn not to be, a Saturn return in Virgo, not be so judgmental on yourself, first house, and it will ease up all of the stress in the physical body. What else? Anybody else?
Well, I just wanted to say, in relationship to Maureen, you know, this is a very strong soul force, looking at this chart. Like, if I didn't know her even, I would think that. And she's really facilitated herself. Her soul has really given her a beautiful gift in that Mercury trine Saturn from 1 to 5. And with Mercury being the ruler of her MC. So, you know, the danger of that configuration is that she could, you know, just stay in her head. But because it's in earth signs, if she can access, you know, the emotional body, to facilitate that intellectual understanding that obviously comes very easily to her, that's a very, very facilitating aspect for somebody who's working that tough opposition. So really, I would say again, you know, she knows what she needs to do. She has to just
Try again.
try and get in charge of her emotional body, right? Sun Moon opposition. She's got to get in charge of her emotional body and do it through that.
I wanna comment on that. You're talking about somebody who has a 12th house Pluto with the moon in the 12th.
Right.
Getting in charge of the emotional body is easier said than done. What she has to do is let go of judgments around the mental body, judgments around the emotional body, and allow herself to just ebb and flow sometimes.
Right.
Okay, because it's not going to be a necessarily the conscious control is something that's going to have to be an ebb and flow. That'll come with time.
Well, maybe not controlled and in touch with.
Yes, that's it. Be in touch with that, and just honoring the emotional body in all its many states. And when she does that, I think what it does is it calms everything down physiologically.
With your nose?
Well, I fell on my nose twice. The first time was around Christmas, during that week between Christmas and New Year's. And the second time I fell was March 29th,
What rules the nose?
Aries.
Yeah, the nose is going to be the head. Aries, Saturn. Saturn in the first, in Virgo. You can break bones. You can have.
Well, Chiron cross. Chiron was within 1 degree of your sun when you fell and broke your nose.
And
then
another.
it's going into, and it just ingressed into the 6th house. And I would just think that ingression of Chiron into someone's 6th house is always going to be a key time to be watching the health.
Yeah, and
Yeah, something I've seen in my own charts looking back, that Chiron is a major player in the health issues.
And someone who has a Sun-Jupiter conjunction can have coordination issues, balance issues. And so,
Especially in Aquarius.
especially in Aquarius. And so the question is does she, when you have your physical incidences, are they triggered by some stress that's going on?
Yes. Let's see. The second time I fell, I was running out the door to get to an appointment, and I didn't want to be late, and I slipped. So it was stress. So now I walk. And both times I slipped, I was wearing these same old sandals that I'd had for ages, and all the bottoms were slippery
Yes.
and worn down.
Yes.
So after the second time I fell, I finally threw them out. Yay!
Yes. Yes.
And I bought sandals with grippy bottoms at Whole Foods, which are so much more comfortable anyway. I do become hard on myself. Why didn't I throw them out the first time, you know?
Yep. And the other thing that we can look at is that Saturn in Virgo, that's there in the first, is in conjuncts to that stellium in Aquarius. You know, and typical of crises, well, what type of crises? Well, Saturn in the first, breaking bones, the breaking of the nose, you know, and doing it through moments of stress. So this would be something who overall, just like you're discovering, Maureen, you know, the more you can learn to be in your body, the healthier it will be for you. And I think sometimes the deeper message behind having the breaking of the bones or the falling down or this crises to the physical body like that, it's just your message of learning to be in your body and to honor the emotions in the body, to be in touch with your body. Anybody else? Let's start moving back into more of the physiology that we can see going on. The fact that Maureen has a Venus in that Aquarius, all right? And she's got, even though it's wide, I use wide orbs when I'm working with health and wellness astrology. I just have found that they work. And so she's got this wide inconjunct between the Saturn in the first and this Venus in Aquarius. And when women have aspects between Saturn and Venus, you might have to watch the whole osteoporosis thing. And so, and with Jupiter in Aquarius there in the sixth and all the nutrition issues, I would say that this is someone who would have to be careful with the whole, I'm back to digestive enzymes again, to assimilate minerals in the body, because she could have an inclination towards the whole osteoporosis thing. You know, and the bones broke because of stress, because of not watching, you know, where she was going or paying attention or in a hurry or that kind of stuff. But if you don't have, you know, there's some indicators of some sensitivities to osteoporosis. For someone else, they could just fall down and have a bruise. The fact that you fall down and broke something, you know, again, I would say that you might want to pay attention to good minerals intake to keep this strength in the bones going as you move into your golden years. You see where I'm seeing that? The Saturn in the first house, Saturn has a tendency to dehydrate anything. And you put Saturn in Virgo, you can have someone who can have some issues with the whole diet thing and the ability to assimilate the minerals. Okay? And you put Saturn in the first house, and there can be some issues with muscles and joints. And so I agree with what Chris said about this is someone who would want to, would find gentle exercise like yoga and Tai Chi helpful. But because of this Jupiter-Sun conjunction in Aquarius 6, and there could be some coordination issues, this is someone that I would still say, as you are getting older, you might want to try even a mild type of weightlifting, okay? Because lifting weights strengthens bones and improves coordination.
Yeah, there's also like Pilates, which is a really, it's not.
Yes,
it's,
Pilates.
you know, it makes you
Yoga.
strong. Yoga, Pilates.
Yoga. I mean, even in the handouts of the manual, you know, just those little exercises with barbells, those could be important for you in helping, again, get in your body, but also then build that strength of the bones and build that overall coordination with muscles. Okay? trouble with your computer?
I forgot to plug it in. So it just now went dark.
Okay, we've wandered off from the 6th, 12th house, but everybody start to get this? And we're, again, something else when you see Aquarius on the 6th house cusp, it's like having Uranus in the 6th. And when you have Uranus in the 6th, there is this whole nervous system stress, being wired, having to calm self down. And so I would say also perhaps checking into different herbs or the nutrition that can just really help you with calming yourself down and not being so wired. Now, let's start. Do you guys want to play with this chart some more? Or do you want to move on to another chart? Do you want to flip Leo and Aquarius around? Even if we don't have somebody's chart to work with?
I have Uranus in the 6th. You just kind of segued into that.
Okay.
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 Could I ask just one quick question? Her 12th house cusp of Leo, ruler of Leo is Sun in opposition to the Pluto moon balsamic.
Yeah.
So her resolution for her underlying spiritual, aspects would be for her to really, as Christina would say, get in touch with her emotional body
Yes.
at a very deep level.
Yes.
That's the kind of resolution. And then the North Node being the resolution of the Uranian square would be even an added aspect of being in
Yes.
touch with the deep emotional body and no
Yes.
judgment, just being in the kind of soup of it.
Yes.
Neptune
Yes.
and Pisces
Yes.
and Scorpio.
Yeah. And
Okay.
and being in touch with the emotional body and a strong need for self-forgiveness.
12th house.
Saturn in Virgo, the 12th house planets, the Sun in Aquarius in the 6th. Chris?
Well, and I'll never forget what Jeffrey said about retrograde Venus, right? First, you got to love yourself, right? That's the primary relationship
Ooh, there we go.
for all retrograde Venuses, regardless of sign,
And-
because that's your deal.
And look at how how Venus rules the veins and arteries and capillaries. Again, you can see this propensity towards a hardening of the arteries that can come along. So the whole heart issue with the conjunction of the sun that can come along. So this is also someone who can have some miasms towards the whole circulation thing that will involve the heart. That will involve the brain, Aquarius on that 6th house cusp, those planets in Aquarius, the Sun in Aquarius, the Leo Aquarius axis in this 6th and 12th. So there can be some miasms that might come along, and again, in that whole hardening of the arteries. And so what Chris just said with Venus retrograde, the emotional healing aspects, loving yourself is so important to not be frozen, not be hardened.
And she's Pluto. She also has a Pluto retrograde,
Mhm.
too.
And the Pluto and Leo generation. This is a generation of souls that has to work with heart issues, that has to be sensitive to that whole self-love thing. Okay. We don't have to look at charts just once. We can definitely, come back and look at charts again.
Can I just
Sure.
ask you, Pam, to repeat the second thing you said about the resolution, because I didn't get it?
I don't know, the resolution node, in
Yeah.
the North Node in the 8th house, which I just think reaffirms the, deep commitment to be embracing the emotional body.
The ability to confront any emotional limitations.
Yeah, to look at your own shadow.
The-
too.
It would reinforce this whole I am not a victim thing. Why am I drawing this to me? In what ways am I drawing these lessons to me to learn how to love myself better? That then allows my body to melt and flow participate in life. Sometimes when you see a lot of the Virgo in 6th house, you know, you can have souls that can hold themselves in extremes of self-judgment, so that sometimes they'll just squeeze life force out of them. In Maureen's case, you know, freeze the life force out of her. And then the physiological heart issues, the physiological hardening of the arteries, the stress that makes everything freeze up rather than flow. Now, if I can, then just one more thing that I'll say before we move on. Chris touched on this a little. Because we see these planets in Libra in the 2nd house, you know, making this trine, you know, she has the abilities to understand this stuff, and she has the abilities to open up and flow to the degree she's willing to work on her own inner strength. That Libra 2nd house, the Mars, the Neptune.
It's also the ruler of the North Node.
When you see Mars in Libra, again, it's going to reiterate this. When I look at this chart, I see issues with the blood, as well as this whole nervous system stress issue that goes on. There's also a lot of blood issues that go on. It's Saturn in the 1st, okay? It is the Mars in Libra, Neptune in Libra, Neptune the immune system, working with blood issues, working with, you know, balancing all that. And then also you can see it with Venus in Aquarius, and then in the 6th, that house of health. This is someone that I would say would want to do work with cleansing of the blood. And this would be reiterated by this Jupiter-Sun conjunction in Aquarius, a frozen liver, a spazzy liver. And you heard her say herself, what's the liver's main role? Producing bile to digest fats, in addition to cleansing the toxicities out of the blood. And so how she can get sick with eating the wrong kinds of fats, you're going to have to find the healthy fats for yourself. Can you eat avocado?
Yes, I like avocado. I stopped eating butter a long time ago, and trans fat. I use cooking spray. I don't even use the oil. So I use cooking spray, and I use low-fat dressing. And I drink light soy milk, but maybe now after talking to you, you told me to get some almond milk. What did you tell me?
Almond milk.
Yeah, I like that too.
Rice milk is really good?
For many people, rice milk has such a high sugar content, it creates a blood sugar reaction. The other thing that I would suggest that you might want to try is olive oil. And you can cook with olive oil. Olive oil is one of the few oils that, you know, can still be nutritional for you when heated.
It's not so good to heat.
Pardon?
It's not so good to heat.
Not so good to heat? Well, none of the oils are good to heat. None of the. Go ahead.
If you use like sunflower oil or something, but you're changing a lot of the chemistry in the olive oil. That it's just not. It's not. You're losing a lot of what the olive oil is giving to you by cooking it like that as a main source.
Well, that's
something
interesting, because but again, my sources are old. I'd heard you could
Yeah.
heat olive
One
oil.
of the best oils to use for cooking is coconut oil,
Yes.
but you need to
Yeah,
use it as a
that's-
much less temperature. because it cooks faster.
Yeah, and it also a little of it because of the saturated fats with that. But I would, yeah, again, the less you cook any oils, the better you are. But olive oil might be another one for you with that.
Just the way I cook with water. I fry with water.
How do you do that?
Well,
I do that too.
yeah, it's like
Steaming.
well, it
You're
is sort of
steaming.
steaming. You do lose a little bit of the flavor of that kind of that nice flavor we all love of fried food, but you can compensate with herbs and spices. So,
So
it's
things don't stick with water?
no, you have to watch it. You can't walk away from the stove and stuff, but you get the pan really hot and then you just throw your vegetables in, put in your juice, well, water or broth or whatever you want to use like that, but a liquid, and then you add your herbs at the end so that they don't get overcooked.
Yeah, chicken broth's good to cook with.
No.
Yeah, chicken broth is good to cook with. It's one of the things that they recommend with Weight Watchers to substitute chicken broth oil.
Blood cleanses, Maureen, on a regular basis. I mean, the blood purifier herbs that we talked about, I would see those would be as very good for you, especially because of the Neptune in Libra. Neptune in Libra generation can have immune issues with the blood.
I'm just going to mention, in terms of all the Aquarius and the Libra, that what you're talking about, blood, so circulation, and a lot of circulation comes back to breathing. So I think that really deep breathing, pranayama, as well as like qigong and tai chi exercises, where you're consciously, intentionally breathing and doing different kinds of breathing exercises. Even more where you're, taking in, say, for 4, holding for 4, releasing for 4, like a count like that, because it's oxygenating the whole body during that time. So I would just see that with all that air, that would be really helpful. You also just mentioned like the generational thing, and I was just wondering if maybe after this we could just go through because you mentioned Uranus in the 6th and how Uranus in Cancer, that generation having stomach issues, and my mom is the same age, and she has crazy stomach issues. But the idea of maybe going through like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto,
Generational things.
generational things that are just some keyword things to look at that could be really helpful. Because that makes sense. I just didn't think of that.
Yep. You bet. You bet. And as a matter of fact, if we want to, because we'll let Maureen's chart rest for a little bit, let me just quickly do the generational thing, and then we can play with the houses of it later on. And when it comes to Pluto, Uranus, and you've got them through the houses in your handouts, okay? But Pluto, the whole Pluto in Cancer generation is another generation that will have digestive issues. They will have elimination issues. I mean, this is the generation of doctors, Pluto in Cancer, that told us one bowel movement every 3-4 days is okay. Okay, so the Pluto in Cancer generation is going to just have to be very sensitive to the stomach. They're going to have to be sensitive to digestive enzymes. They're going to have to be sensitive to the whole bowel and elimination issues. So for digestion, that generation, it's the whole GI, gastrointestinal tract from the mouth to the anus that this generation is going to be sensitive to. This is going to be a generation that is very sensitive to fluids. I mean, if you look at all of these Pluto in Cancers, as you see them moving around and as you see them in their nursing homes, and as we watched all the little old bridge players over there on the lunch hour, did any of you catch all those little old ladies playing bridge?
Oh, they were playing poker.
Well, they could have been 2,500.
Kim, can you
But-
give some dates? When you're, if you know off the
Yes,
top.
yes, I do. Pluto in Cancer is going to be the 1938-39 all the way up to 1956-57.
that's Leo.
Oh, excuse me, Pluto in, yes, you're right. I've got these. Thank you, dear.
I just know my mom.
Hold
and
on.
dad were there.
Hold on, I brought these because I did wanna speak to this, okay? And so, hold on, and I'll get this down specific. I know the Leo in my head. Whoops, that one's too far back. So hold on. Let me get to the next one, okay? Pluto in Cancer is 1912, 13, 14, meaning it went in and out 5 times. 1912, 13, 14 through 1937, 38, 39. Those are Pluto in Cancers. Okay? And so they've got that whole, water issue. None of them drink enough water. They got all of those digestive issues, so therefore they've got all of these elimination colon issues. I mean, this is the laxative generation. But it's all of us now.
And remember what Jeffrey said about them? That term he used, intestinal fortitude.
Yes.
Remember, like that's the other side of it, right? That they had that ability to just sort of eat nothing through the depression.
Yes. Yep. So the Pluto in Cancer generation had a lot of food issues. Like she said, they came through, that was the tail end of the dirty 30s when there was no food with that. And so then we moved to that Pluto in Leo generation, which is 1937, 38, 39, through 1956, 57, 58. And so that means Pluto was going in and out. You've actually got to look in an ephemeris to see where the Pluto generation is during these transitional years. But this Pluto in Leo generation is the whole heart issue. They've got the whole hardening of the arteries issue. Relative to the polarity Aquarius, they've got the whole stress issue, circulation issues. Emotionally, they have self-love issues. That bottomless pit thing, that's going to then associate physiologically with the whole heart issue.
Kimberly, can I ask a quick question? Because the heart is an organ of purification. It purifies the blood. Do you wonder if they could have blood issues?
No,
No.
the heart is the pump.
No, it's a purifier.
Well, yes.
Yeah, it filters.
Yes, but so does the liver and the kidneys. And the liver and the kidneys filter more of the blood
More.
than the heart does.
Yeah, but the heart does a lot of it. But
Yeah, yeah. The heart is that pump.
But it also, if you see the inside of a heart, it is, it purifies.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
profound.
yeah,
It's
it-
just not
it's-
metaphorically, it literally, because I held the liver and they're all, and I held lungs. So they're really, the
Wow.
heart's really, really, it's a purifier. It purifies a
Wow.
lot. It's really beautiful. And the lungs,
So, and so your question,
does it have to do with blood purification? That's what I wonder. Pluto and Leo.
yeah, it would have to. It had to deal with the blood issues just because of the heart. What it would have to do is the hardening of the arteries. And so for me, that Pluto and Leo generation has to do with having healthy fats. Okay, because the healthy fats keep the heart lubricated, keep the brain lubricated. See, that's the other thing, the Pluto and Leo generation with the Aquarius polarity, they can have all of the stroke issues, all of the brain issues. They can have the mental issues because of that. But
Kim Marie, look. Did anyone ever know what Alzheimer's was before the Pluto and Leo started to?
right,
You know.
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There's some of the head and the brain. There's another one I'll look up on a break. Pam to just see what they're going to say with that. Okay? So you get kind of getting this generational thing down then with the Pluto and Leo generation. I mean, mainly the heart, but the brain too. All of the circulation issues. So yeah, I mean, I'm coming to this point as that find one of the 12 archetypes that doesn't concern the blood.
Yeah. Kind of seems like that.
It just, and find one of the 12 archetypes that doesn't concern the nervous system, even though it's ruled by Uranus. Where do you not have nerves in your body? Okay. Maureen, honey?
Yes, I was wondering why you mentioned Alzheimer's having to do with Pluto and Leo, specifically because my mother had Alzheimer's and she was obviously Pluto and Cancer.
Specifically to the Pluto and Leo generation, it's the Aquarius to, the polarity to Aquarius, and Aquarius dealing with the brain. And Alzheimer's is a disease of the brain, holes in the brain.
Yeah, and it's not to say that it wasn't present before, but I think what we're going to see is just an escalation, which we have already seen an escalation as the Pluto and Leos are getting into their 50s and some into their 60s. And as they get older, there's going to be more, unless they do the Pluto and Leo thing and find the cure, which is also possible.
Okay, Maureen left. So I just looked up the heart, and so I'll go into that when she comes back. Okay. So anybody else think of something with Pluto and Leo? Okay, Pluto and Virgo generation, which 1956, 57, 58 through 1971, 72. This is a generation with, back to, again, digestive issues. This is going to be, this is the health nut generation. This is the generation that popularized health food stores. Not to say Pluto and Leos didn't, but the Pluto and Virgos brought, nutrition. And so the Virgo thing is going to relate to the nervous system and stress. So this is a generation that has to watch stress and has to watch the nerves. It has to watch the whole, because of Virgo's relationship to the intestines, it's going to be another generation that has to work with colon issues. It can then be a generation that has to work with toxicity issues. Toxicity of the intestines and the colon. This is a generation that has to work with mental issues. Virgo. Left brain. Anybody else?
Judgment issues?
Yes, judgment issues, totally. The Pluto and Virgo generation is going to have to deal with rigidity issues. The Pluto and Virgo is crises, okay? And so the Pluto and Virgo generation can literally have to create physical crises for themselves to change something. And it's almost like they'll have to create a physical crisis to do that Pisces polarity, to change their beliefs. So as I was saying earlier, that Pluto and Virgo generation can squeeze themselves off from life force, source connection, and that can, go a whole bunch of different directions as it gets into that whole physical area. What else? Anything else? I'll glance at my notes here with our archetypes and extrapolate from there. Oh, the Pluto and Virgo generation with the whole nervous system and the whole stress thing. This is a generation that can have, like this would be a generation that my guess I get knowing as the multiple sclerosis this can be a generation more sensitive to that because it is the destroying of the nerves. Yeah, fry out the nerves. And so this is a generation that can physically, that can just literally exhaust themselves from overwork. This is a generation that doesn't know how to take time off and rest.
Would Pluto and Virgo tend to do a lot of plastic surgery because they don't
Oh,
think
good
they're,
one.
they don't think they're ever perfect enough.
So the Pluto and Virgo generation, plastic surgery. And look at how plastic surgery has become such a in thing with that.
Wouldn't that be a Pluto and Leo thing too, though?
Can be both of them.
Vanity.
Can be with Leo, it's the vanity, and with Virgo, it's the imperfections.
But if
Pluto and Libra with the prettiness.
Yeah,
It's just gonna keep
plastics.
and Scorpio with the sexiness. So you're gonna have the plastic surgery is ready for next decade.
but it's just gotten so out of hand. You know, I lived in Hollywood back in the early '60s, and there really wasn't a lot of plastic surgery or anything going on. And all of a sudden, everybody, it's like there is no real people left there. So it's got to be this generation.
Yeah, the Plutos and Virgos are going to fine tune it. You know, in a positive note, you know, the Plutos and Virgos are really bringing out nutrition. You know, you can't ignore, you know, the body-mind connection, but you also got to pay attention to what you eat. I mean, the Pluto and Virgo generation can clean up our food.
But on the positive side of that, a lot of plastic surgery has done a lot to help bring people back into a lifestyle when they've been, you know, truly traumatized through something that's happened, like severe burns or car accidents or things like that. So that has come through the Pluto and Leo generation too. Pluto and Virgo.
Pluto and Virgo. And I've talked to Pluto and Virgos who, you know, have done plastic surgeries or various surgeries, and they do go through some emotional, mental shifts to, you know, a deeper level of self-love or feeling better about themselves. You know, so to each his own, you know, as they're working their way through it.